As we learn disturbing new details about the murder threat against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, it seems that not only the media has shrugged off the story, we have yet to hear the president say one word. What we now know is that this man allegedly showed up near Justice Kavanaugh's home with the intent to kill him, armed with a small arsenal, including a gun, a knife, zip ties, and duct tape. He has been charged with attempted murder of a Supreme Court justice. So where are the demands for the strong condemnation following acts of violence from the president or from the media? Kaylee, I start with you on this. The president is the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, and he leads this country silent after attempted murder charges filed against a Supreme Court justice, You just asked the key question. Where is the media? Okay, and since the media won't ask the question, I will. Where are you, President Biden? Where are you, Vice President Kamala Harris? Because I can tell you this, anytime there was any form of violence or hatred or bigotry, I, as the press secretary, would be asked immediately by the media what the president's stance on it was. In fact, I was asked so much that I had a tab in pretty much every single binder, I'm pretty sure it was called Violence, where it was just pages and pages of the president condemning hatred, bigotry, violence in all of its forms. But it was a game to the media. They're not asking that and demanding it of the president and of the vice president. We've gotten the statement from the press secretary. We've gotten the statement from the deputy. What about the leader of the free world? And he had ample opportunity. He walked out on the South Lawn. The press is right there, and oftentimes you want to get a message out, you stop and you say something. President Trump did it all the time. Then you arrive at Joint Base Andrews, you pass the press on your way up the stairs. I think the ones he fell down, by the way, on his way up. Then he had that off the record. You could have said, hey, guys, on the record really quick, I condemn the violence. Then you had Jimmy Kimmel. Then you had the vice president giving a speech. That was 5 opportunities. We get silence from Joe and Kamala. So to Kaylee's point, Guy, the American people depend on the media to represent them in holding the president accountable. As you tweeted earlier this morning, though, all the news that's not fit to print.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll remind everyone that this White House declined to condemn the doxing of Supreme Court justices and their addresses on the internet, which this guy found and then went to go kill Brett Kavanaugh. Still crickets on that front from them. And if you're looking, Kaylee, for accountability from the press, well, here's what that looks like today in the New York Times. I think we have this. Take a look at the front page of the New York Times today. That is a little tiny snippet at the very bottom of the front page. You can read about the arrest near home of justice on page 20.
Isn't that
And
nice?
there were some other media critics pointing out that there were other major newspapers that did not have it on the front page at all. This was someone coming to try to murder one of 9 justices on the United States Supreme Court, radicalized based on anger over opinions, trying to...
A leaked opinion.
A leaked, and then I
guess... That hasn't even been put on the record yet.
A draft opinion and another issue as well.
We don't know what the inside will look like.
But he wanted to exact his sick retribution with murder. He showed up with a bunch of weapons, equipment to break into a house. He was deterred, by the way, by good guys with guns, U.S. Marshals. He decided he wasn't going to try to get past them, thank God. And the New York Times sees fit to put it at the very bottom of their page in this anodyne, little tiny headline about something you can read deep, deep into the newspaper. And I know it's something that we say all the time, conservatives, about media bias. If this were the exact same set of facts and the ideological roles were reversed, the coverage would look awfully different. And we all know it.
Right.
Amen.
And Congresswoman, to get your take, too, on that exact point, as well, there is crickets from the media on holding politicians and elected officials accountable for their rhetoric, which I would argue the Democrat Party would call incitement if the tables were turned. Let's get a listen to what Senator Schumer said in 2020. Let's watch.
You have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
Kraken?
And just last month, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot tweeted, "To my friends in the LGBTQ+ community, the Supreme Court is coming for us next. This moment," she said, "has to be a call to arms. We will not surrender our rights without a fight." Congresswoman, your thoughts?
I mean, what do they think is going to happen here? When you use that kind of incendiary language, and it is directly incendiary and insightful, you have guys like this man who went to go and threaten the life of Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh because he felt it would give his life purpose. So he felt that he was going to be fulfilling. Finally, he would do something good for the world because he was following what Schumer and other politicians were saying. I think that's what's so dangerous about this. The other thing is just when you have people like a senior Democrat in the U.S. Senate inciting this kind of violence, it just shows their disrespect for the Constitution and this independent branch of government, that they feel like it's okay to pressure them and threaten them, politicize all of this and try to influence the decisions that they're made. And lastly, I think just Congress has completely failed, the House in particular, in passing this security bill. My sister is a deputy U.S. Marshal. She provided security for the Supreme Court justices. Regardless of what they say, they are woefully under-resourced. In a normal environment, in a heightened threatened environment, they need the support to be able to keep them safe.
That's right. And actually, a congressional report came out with the conclusion of just that they were woefully underfunded, under-resourced, and were not able to complete essentially their job as expected. Also, your family is amazing, and your parents must be so incredibly proud of you all. And Harris, I'd like to come to you as well on, we constantly talk about the social climate and the culture climate as well. And amidst the really serious nature of an attempted murder charge against a Supreme Court justice, we have the group Ruth Sent Us, which tweeted yesterday, mockingly, we offer our thoughts and prayers to Brett and Ashley Kavanaugh, described what happened, and then they say, as they called the police on himself to confess his murderous rage against the abusive, alcoholic justice, they say, we didn't send him. That's a really horrifying thing to send in the wake of a family that was threatened with death.
Well, apparently, if your politics don't align with Ruth Sent Us or some of those on the far radical left, then your life isn't worth much. I mean, that's what that communicates to me, right? And how do we know? Because they were celebrating, keeping drums. I'm not kidding. They were dancing on the property of U.S. Justice Kavanaugh hours after we reported the breaking news. The video, well, there it is. Look, you can see for yourself. We ran a lot of it on the Faulkner Focus. Because, I mean, if you didn't know it was a protest, you'd think it was a rally for, summer's coming. Right? Not that a U.S. justice had just been threatened. And you went through the list of things that he was carrying, and you talked, Congresswoman, about Roski stating that he began thinking about how to give his life some purpose. In addition to all the things you listed, a crowbar, nail punch, pistol light, duct tape, hiking boots with padding on the outside of the soles, and other items. What does all of that tell you? Was he planning to remove people from the premises? I mean, so I have that question. I also have this question. Yes, we have rules on the books, 1503, 1507, protecting justices, judges, jurors from people being on their personal property. But it doesn't extend to their families the actual protection that you were talking about, Congresswoman. So you've got U.S. Marshals who are now with the justices, but we would have to make that happen legally to protect their families.
Exactly right.
Right. And I guess I think that goes back to the law preventing the publication of addresses and against the amplification of such. Exactly.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Exactly. That up until now, though, we haven't seen those laws enforced because it's not coming from the White House to do so. Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.